Hello guys and welcome back to this new video. Today we will learn how to give checkmate with a knight and bishop. This of course is somewhat difficult ending compared to the basic ones, but if you master the technique required it becomes much more easier. And in this video I will try to show you the most simple and instructive way to deliver checkmate. Now before we dive into more details, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to get our latest updates. Alright guys, without further ado, let's jump right into it. We will start with a more simple position. Here our knight on d5 and our bishop on b5 do an amazing job of keeping the black king imprisoned. We can see that all these squares are taken away from the black king, which means that he only has access to these few squares. And we will try to eliminate a few of them each time until the black king is left only with these two squares. And once this happens, we will try to maneuver our pieces to deliver checkmate. And you will see it's very easy. Here, as I said, our pieces are placed perfectly, which means it's time to activate our king. And that's why we go king to e5, king to c8, king to e6, king to d8, and king to d6. All these squares are taken away, so the black king must go back to c8. And now we outflank the black king, taking away this key d8 square, king to b7, and king to d7. And now black only has access to these three squares. And once we take the b8 square from the black king, he will be imprisoned between a8 and a7, and then we will maneuver our pieces to give checkmate. Now king to b8 and bishop to a6, king to a7 and bishop to c8. Now if king to a8, simply king to c7, so black tries to make our task more difficult and he goes king to b8, and now king to d8. The black king has to go away and king to c7. And now the only thing that black can do is to shuffle his king between a8 and a7. And now we have time to maneuver our knight, and we go king to e7. Black goes back to a7, and we give a check on c6. And after king to a8, bishop to b7 is a checkmate. Now I should probably mention that I started with this position because I want it to be a key position that we're going to be aiming for in the next positions. And also an important thing that you should note is that you can only deliver checkmate in a corner which is in the same color of your bishop, which means we can either deliver checkmate on a8 square or on the h1 square. Now our task is much easier because the king is already closer to the a8 square, but now let's see if the black king is on the other corner and we have to drive him away from there. And here comes our next position. The black king is on h8, and we have to find a way to force him to move to a8 where we can deliver checkmate. Here we simply start with a check on f7, and after black moves to g8, only move. Now bishop to e4, again only move king to f8, and we go bishop to h7, taking this square from the black king. King to e8, and now knight to e5. And here the black king should go king to d8, because if the black king simply goes back to f8, this only makes our task much easier. We give a check, and after king to e8, king to e6, now king to d8, king to d6, king back to e8, bishop to g6 check, king back to d8, knight to c5, king to c8. Now we go bishop to e8, and after king to d8, we move our bishop to b5, trying to establish our key position. King to c8, now we go bishop to d7 check. And the reason here, if black goes king to d8 back, this is simply checkmate. So the black king has to go to b8, and now we see that the black king is getting slowly imprisoned. King to c6, king to a7, king to c7, king to a8, and now all there is left is to deliver checkmate. And here we simply go bishop to b5, king to a7, knight to a4, king to a8. We give a check with the knight, another check, and now after king to a8, simply checkmate. But here after knight to e5, black will try to make our task much more difficult, and he will go king to d8. And the reason is now he's trying to escape and go to the middle of the board. And now we simply go king to e6, king to c7, and it seems that the black king is escaping, but after two more precise moves, the black king will be perfectly imprisoned. And here we see this nice V-shape maneuver that we did with our knight, which you should remember because it's very useful, and it's the way to drive the black king to the other corner. Now after this move, we see that we took these two important squares from the black king, so the only way for black to escape is to go king to c6. But now after the last precise move, bishop to d3, taking away this escaping square from the black king, And we can see that knight is covering these two squares, and there is nowhere that the black king can run. King back to c7, bishop to b5, taking the c6 square from the black king, king to b7, king to d6, king to c8, and now simply the maneuver knight to f6 and knight to d5, and we are back to our first position. Knight to f6, king to d8, knight to d5, king to c8, and now it's time to start activating our king. King to e7, king to b7, king to d7, king to b8, and bishop to a6. King to a7, bishop to c8, and we will repeat the same technique. King to b8, king to d8, king to a7, king to c7, king to a8. Now, like the first example, we can go knight to e7 and knight to c6, or also we can go knight to c3 and knight to b5. So let's try the second one, knight to c3, king to a7, knight to b5 check, king to a8, and checkmate. Now let's see the more general case when the black king is not imprisoned in any corner of the board, and in fact here we will put the pieces back in their first starting positions. Now it's white to move, and we simply go king to e2, now king to d7 by black. Here it's a clever move by black because we want to give checkmate on the dark squares, which means it makes more sense for black to run towards the white corners in order to make it more difficult for us to give checkmate. Now king to d3, king to c6, and the bishop to f4, controlling this important diagonal. Black goes king to d5, putting his king in the middle of the board, making it more difficult for us. And now knight to e2, king to c5, and knight to c3. And we can see that we are slowly controlling more squares around the black king. And the first part of our task is to drive the black king to this corner and then slowly drive him down the board using the same technique that we showed in the previous position. Now after king to b4, king to d4, king to a5, and now king to c5. King to a6, going for the white corner, king to c6. Now black can of course go back, but this only makes it easier for us because we want to deliver checkmate here. So black goes king to a7, knight to d5, activating our knight, king to e8. If black again goes here, we simply take this square from the black king, and it's a much easier task. So black goes king to a8, now knight to b6 check, king to a7, and bishop to c7. Black has to go to a6, and now bishop to b8 taking this square from the black king. And we can see that the black king now is driven down the board, king to a5, and now we will use our nice knight maneuver, knight to d5 and knight to b4. So we go knight to d5, black goes king to a4, trying to run via the b3 square, and again knight to b4, and simply bishop to f4 will be sufficient to imprison the black king. Now king to c5, king to b3, knight to b4, king to c3, and simply bishop to f4. Now we are taking these squares from the black king and he can't run. King back to b3, and as we saw in the first and second example, if we simply go bishop to d2 here and try to maneuver our knight via this square and go to d4, with this construction of the knight on d4 and the bishop on b2, it's an easy checkmate. And we already saw how to do that in the first two examples. So now I will show you another way to give checkmate, and this is by going bishop to e5. Now again we are taking this important c3 square from the king, so he can't run. Now king to a4, king to c4, king to a5, trying to run back to this corner. Now simply bishop to c7 check. This square is taken, so the black king has to go back to a4. And now knight to d3, king to a3, and now we simply give the move back to black and we go bishop to b6. Because after black goes back to a4, we want to give a check with the knight, driving the black king again to a3, now simply king to c3. This square is taken, so black has to go to a2, now king to c2, king back to a3, now we give a check, king to a2, now simply knight to d3. And now we can see that the black king is imprisoned, simply king to a1. Now all we have to do is to control this square, and then king to d4 will be a checkmate. So all we have to do is to waste a move with our bishop, and we simply go bishop to b4, king to a2, knight to c1 check, king back to a1, and now bishop to c3 checkmate. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Again, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to get our latest videos. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.